We are joined now by Washut of HuskerOnline. Robin, what's going on, man?
What's going on, fellas?
Oh, not too much. Long time no talk. How you been?
Doing all right. Staying busy. It's the tail end of football basketball crossover season, so things are steadily starting to slow down a little bit, but also ramping up on the hoops end. So always something to talk about.
Well, as it ramps up on the hoops end, I want to start with the 8-0 start for Nebraska, their best start in almost 50 years. As you look at this Nebraska team, A, did you expect them to start off this hot? And B, has it changed what you feel about their ceiling this year?
I thought they would have a chance, especially with the way they scheduled to stockpile some wins. They did themselves kind of the usual plan of setting up opportunities to, some early bye games, build momentum, get some continuity, and then kind of gradually testing themselves more and more. They went and played Oklahoma in Sioux Falls, and technically that's a neutral site game, but it was really anything but. So, they were able to maximize on that opportunity to play in front of a home crowd against for their first high major opponent. And I think the way that they won that game kind of propelled them going down to Kansas City, where, it was a similar situation, maybe not quite the fan base advantage, but, they were able to kind of build on that Oklahoma game. And then I think that stretch really kind of set up to where they are now, to where, they faced some early season adversity, in a kind of a variety of forms. And, it wasn't always pretty, but to their credit, kind of found ways to win, each and every. And so I think that's kind of built their confidence, and, they've been able to navigate the non-con thus far to get to this point. But, starting Sunday and then on into next week with those first two Big Ten games, that's the next step to where, they've been able to do what they hope to do thus far, but the challenge only continues to get increasingly difficult, starting with a big time rivalry game that, I know that they're like the Ken Pom projects them to win it, but kind of all bets are off in this series. There's been plenty of instances where the team that's supposed to win doesn't. So this will be the next thing where, they got to handle expectations. People are expecting them to win a heated rivalry game. How do they handle that? Do they go out and take care of business, or do they, have some challenges with another slow start and find themselves in a bit of a situation? So kind of a gradual learning process with this team. Long story short, they've done what they'd hoped to do thus far, but it's only going to get more difficult from here.
You talk about it getting more difficult and the next challenge and all that, but next man up, Connor Essegian's lost for the season. What's that look like for Nebraska in terms of lineups and who might be taking his spot in the rotation?
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to add much more to the rotation. I think if anything, you'll see Kendall Blue play a little bit more. He only played like 9 minutes or so against USC Upstate. So, I mean, like his role kind of is what it is. I think the real answer is guys that were already in the rotation are just going to play more. Cale Jacobson's going to see a much bigger role. Braden Frager is going to play, even more than he already was in his first season here. So I think that's it's going to be a collective effort where just your core group that was already kind of your primary rotation is just going to have to take on a bigger workload. So losing Connor, I mean, he was struggling. I think he was only shooting 28 something % from three on the season. So, he's kind of getting off to a slow start, but he's still one of your best 3-point shooting threats. And then his leadership on the court, I think that's going to be as hard to replace as anything. So it's a disappointing loss, takes away another weapon from Nebraska's rotation. And it's going to be, like I said, kind of an all hands on deck to fill that void, where I don't know if they're just going to add a guy to replace his role. It's going to be kind of up to several guys to step up and kind of take up more of that workload that he leaves behind.
Robin, obviously this team is a mix of guys we're familiar with that are coming back from last year and guys that are brought in new, and one that is both coming back and sort of new in Jamarcus Lawrence. Who is better than you thought they were going to be this year?
Sam Hoiberg. Sam Hoiberg is arguably the most important player on that roster right now. Because like you knew Rink was going to be the best player. You knew Price was going to be their best transfer. But how critical Sam Hoiberg has been, I think everybody just kind of looked at him as a depth piece. But he's, from a production standpoint, done as much as maybe anybody else on the roster. He's one of their best rebounders. He's the best perimeter defender. He's scoring at a higher rate than ever before in his career. You go back to that Kansas City, his attack to the rim was kind of the difference late in that game, and he won them the Kansas State game. So, you're seeing an evolution, so to speak, of his offensive confidence, where he's not just a guy they put out there to play tough defense. Like he's giving them production on the other end. And I think that's been kind of a revelation, so to speak, because I think a lot of people are wondering, like, well, is this just nepotism? Why is he even in the starting lineup? Some 6-foot guy that can't shoot. Well, he's become one of the best glue guys in the Big Ten Conference, and I think that kind of has caught a lot of people by surprise. Like I knew Sam was going to be an important piece of the rotation because of his defense, like always, but how productive he's been with. Obviously his defense, but the scoring, he's dishing out a ton of assists. He's taking care of the basketball, and he's just being able to be kind of a complete player, more so than I think anybody expected at this point.
When you look at a guy like Braden Frager, what was your expectation of him coming into this year versus what's your expectation now that we've seen, a quarter of the season sample size?
Well, I don't know if there was a hype train that was full steam ahead more than it was for Braden Frager all off season. Everybody that I've talked to over the course of the summer and into fall workouts just raved about him, saying that this kid is going to be a fixture in the rotation, could potentially push for a starting job, and that's played out exactly as everybody predicted. So that his role thus far hasn't caught me by surprise, but I think what has been kind of fun to watch is seeing just his growth a little bit, as he's kind of learning on the fly a little bit with his first experiences in a lot of different situations. You're starting to see kind of what that picture could be long term. So his role right out of the gates has not been surprising, but I think you're starting to see him kind of grow up a little bit. And what I really like is, obviously he's got some games where, he's hitting some threes, but on a team that sometimes struggles to attack the basket, Braden, although he's the youngest guy on the floor, is oftentimes the most aggressive with the basketball in terms of just putting his head down, and he's got the body and the strength to absorb contact and kind of do things at the rim and in the paint that a lot of Nebraska's other perimeter guys just can't do physically. So he's got an important role on both ends. Go back to the last game against UC Upstate. Fred Hoiberg mentioned that his block shot kind of propelled Nebraska to get out of that funk that they were in when they had to come back and get that game under control. And so, like, he's doing it on offense, but I think his kind of effectiveness defensively has been just important, just because the conversation about how they're going to place Juwan Gary, Braden does a lot of things that Juwan Gary did. And so, as he continues to mature and build that confidence and kind of play up to his potential, that's going to be maybe one of the things to watch is, especially in Big Ten play, you need that kind of quote unquote dog out there. And Braden might be the most suited to be that Juwan Gary type dog in Big Ten play.
Robin, has your ceiling for this team changed?
Slightly. I still need to see it against Big Ten competition. Like, again, like their big wins, Oklahoma is, a decent, pretty good win, but again, they had the home court advantage. They, edged out Kansas State, who just lost by 20 to Bowling Green. So like, how good is that win going to look? So like they've done again what you'd hoped and almost would expect them to do if they were the type of team that they thought they were. But now, this is the week where expectations for the rest of the season might change one way or the other. If they go out and go 2-1 or even 3-0 over these next three, then I think all of a sudden you reevaluate a lot about what to expect come January. But Well, what happens if they go over or go 1-2? Then, and especially 0-2 in league play, then all of a sudden you're like, oh boy, this Big Ten grind is going to be too much for him, and maybe people were right picking him toward the bottom of the conference. So there's a lot to be determined still. I had him. So in our Big Ten media preseason media poll that the Indianapolis Star and Columbus Dispatch put on, I had him at 11th preseason, and that was like one of the highest projections. So, right now, I guess if you look at the net rankings, they're somewhere in that 8 to 9 range. So they're a little bit ahead of what I predicted, but again, there's still so much season left and so many more kind of turning point challenges ahead on the schedule that I'm still going to stick with my prediction. I think that they have an absolute chance to finish in the top half of the league, but they got some work to do yet to solidify that.
So you mentioned this upcoming week. It's Creighton at home, Wisconsin at home, Illinois on the road from Sunday to next Saturday. If you had to rank in order the priority of those wins, how would you do that?
Normally you would say that your Big Ten games are going to carry more value, but I just put so much on that Creighton series, just in terms of the morale and not only from the team, but from the fan base. Like, people can get so discouraged or encouraged one way or the other based off that game. And so, if you go and beat Creighton at home, then, all of a sudden you're going to have a Wednesday night raucous crowd for that Wisconsin opener. That's going to make that a much more intimidating environment. So I probably go Creighton 1 just because of what that game means, not just for, the context of this season, but, the annual weight that it carries. And then Wisconsin, I'll put 2, and Illinois 3, just because winning at Illinois is a daunting challenge. And if, it's kind of one of those where you just try to keep it competitive, and if you can find a way to steal a win, great. But if you lose it, it's not going to hurt you that much. But games at home are always more important. You got to defend your home court. Nebraska was not nearly good at that, not good enough at that last year. And so, with the rivalry aspect, I'll give the edge to Creighton. And then Wisconsin being the Big Ten home opener, that's 2. And then, the Illinois game is one of those that if you get it, great. If not, then oh well.
Robin, as you look forward to Big Ten play, if I gave you one guy that you could have, let's say, elevate his game to whatever you consider the next level, who on this roster are you giving that magic pill to?
Berke. Berke is their best post defender. He does so many things that impact Nebraska on that end of the floor. But if they could get just anything out of him offensively, especially with his shooting, I think he's missed his last 10 3-pointers. Like, he's a better shooter than that. I've seen it myself. Like, he's not like his stats make him look like he's the worst shooter of all time. I don't know what's going on and what the disconnect is between practices and games, but if he could find any semblance of a 3-point shot and become more of a weapon offensively, then suddenly Nebraska's got something cooking, because then that 2-big lineup with him and Rink, that's really difficult for teams to defend. When you got 2 6'10", 6'11" guys that can beat you from the 3 or in the paint, there's not a lot of teams that can match up with that. Right now, he's really not bringing much of anything to the table offensively, and if he could find a way to flip that switch and become even a marginal asset as a scorer, that could do wonders for Nebraska's lineup. So, especially in Big Ten play, where post depth is so important, getting more from Berke offensively, I think could be a separator for Nebraska.
I mean, you mentioned the man himself, Rienk Mast. I mean, his beginning to this season, this 8-game stretch has been astronomical. He's shooting over, 50% from the field. He's hitting 43% from 3. He's averaging 18 points a game. I mean, I understand that his loss last year was huge and how important he was to the team, but is this kind of something that, I mean, maybe not this exact start, but this is what you kind of expected Rink to be for this team?
Yeah, I think he had that potential. I had him as a preseason all-conference pick. You pick like 10 guys, so like it's pick whatever team you want him on. But I think he had potential second team All Big Ten ability because he showed it 2 years ago when he was healthy as a third team All Conference pick. And pair that with how Nebraska constructed this roster around him. Like the whole goal going into this offseason was to surround Rienk Mast with as many offensive weapons and particularly shooters to get the type of spacing that Fred wants to truly run his offense. And so this whole operation was centered around Rienk Mast. And him playing at this level has really been probably the biggest key to Nebraska's success. You go back to the Winthrop game, like they probably lose without Rienk Mast. And like there's been plenty of instances where it goes Sioux Falls, Oklahoma, like some of the threes that he hit, you know, they've changed the course of this season thus far. And so Rink's been everything and more that Nebraska hoped and thought that he could be. And he's got to keep that up. Like he is going to be the ultimate X factor for how good this season is for Nebraska. When he plays well, Nebraska's good and is going to have the chance to win. When he struggles, you know, that he's the most difficult player on the roster to replace, you know, that type of production. So it's a great start for him thus far, and how long and how much he's able to keep that going into kind of this next degree of difficulty on the schedule will ultimately define just kind of what the season is for Nebraska.
That is Robin Washut from Husker Online. Robin, appreciate the time and enjoy the game on Sunday.
Sounds good. Always look forward to it.
Appreciate it. That is Robin Washut from Husker Online. Good stuff there from Robin.